I'm here for the same reason you are, to explore your inherent strengths and to explode your potential. In this video, I'm going to give you the tools to recruit your strengths to develop a strong purpose, how to know if that purpose is strong enough to build the required discipline for success, and how to make that purpose even stronger to surpass what you thought was originally possible. Make sure to stay until the end of the video because I'm going to give you an exercise to integrate these lessons and announce the next video topic, which came from the comment section. Before I get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more tools to build your own mental discipline, effective communication, and leadership skills. I know you're here to make your purpose stronger, but what does purpose have anything to do with peak performance in business? When people get started in this journey on improving themselves, they usually discovered a motivational video that got them very hyped up, juiced up, ready to go. Because it all feels good. You know the saying, pain is temporary. It may last for a minute, an hour, or even a year, but eventually it will subside and something else will go and take its place. Or you may hear, let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't no sunshine and rainbows. It's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. I mean, this is like some best-in-class motivation. That's a horrible Rocky impression, by the way. But motivation is just an emotion. It comes and it goes. Motivation is more like a catalyst to getting things started, like a shot of adrenaline or a panic feeling of urgency. It's a nice jolt, but it's not a sustainable fuel source. Your emotional system is simply not built to sustain that temporary motivational jolt. So you begin to learn about more sustainable sources of energy, and the one that comes to everybody's mind is discipline. Discipline is great because it rides off of building habits, which the human body and brain know very well how to go maintain. You remember the saying, you are what you repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Now the jury is out whether it takes 21 days to build a habit or 90 days to build a habit or even longer, but you still have to show up every single day consistently before it feels natural to do it every single day. In my last video, I introduced my favorite go-to mindset for showing up every day, no matter what, and that mindset is the have-to mindset. I explain and demonstrate how to build it in my last video, but in a nutshell, it's putting yourself in a place where showing up is no longer optional, and that it is in fact required. No different than how you are required to show up for your otherwise normal day-to-day operations that you already perform very well with great consistency, just for your higher goals. Now, where does purpose fit into this picture? Purpose means that you are doing what you have been designed to do. Purpose is the reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists. For example, the purpose of the brick wall behind me is to create boundaries and borders to protect the inside environment from the outside environment. The purpose of these lights are to illuminate my face. The purpose of this camera is to collect my visual and audio information. And the purpose of me is, well, that's where things get a little bit tricky. And you may be asking the same question, what is my purpose? What is my purpose on this planet, in my community? What is my purpose in life? And the question implies almost a singular answer, the same way we learn in school and academia that there are correct answers on your examinations. 2 + 2 is 4, and I before E except after C, and Columbus sailed the ocean blue back in 1492. But when you're dealing with your own biology, I don't believe it to be correct that any person has one life purpose. But rather, there are many purposes we all have, and they all depend a whole lot on who you ask in the first place. You know the saying, everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. A fish makes a great swimmer, but a poor climber. You may say its purpose is swimming. And it's wrong to try to force someone to fit into something they're simply not built for. How many times have you seen the proverbial scenario? I'll save you, the monkey said, as he rescued the fish from the water safely up the tree. No amount of motivation or discipline makes it right for a fish to be out of water, and no amount of discipline or have to makes it right for you to do something that is simply not your purpose. Not only do you have many purposes, which depends largely on who you are asking, but you also have a spectrum by which you are achieving that purpose, or rather a spectrum by which you are on purpose. Just because your purpose is to be a hockey player doesn't mean you'll be a great one. But that's why you take time to cultivate those skills, and you begin to see after skill development and experience, you become more on purpose because of that development. Some purposes you can develop and grow and cultivate to being more on purpose. It might not be my purpose to be a professional hockey player right now, but if I had spent 5 years practicing 5 to 10 hours per day, then maybe of all the things I could be doing with my time after those 5 to 10 years, playing hockey might be the most on purpose thing for me. You should be seeing here that purpose has both an innate and natured components, as well as trained and nurtured components. You find yourself in an environment where you were given a tennis racket at a young age, like Andre Agassi, have first access to a computer like Bill Gates, or get handed a business book when you were 7 years old like Warren Buffett, or get an opportunity to play in Hamburg 1,200 times in 2 years' time like the Beatles did. They had innate talent, no question, but they also had superhuman circumstances to have a skill trained well enough that not only did they figure out their purpose, but if you asked others to take a guess what their purpose was, then you probably have a better idea of their purpose than maybe you have of your own purpose. These weren't fish out of water, but rather fish taught how to swim faster, more effectively, with greater strength and agility, halfway because of their innate talents, and halfway because of the situations they found themselves in. So back to high performance. How does purpose fit into becoming a high performer in business? Understanding the nature of purpose is crucially important to high performance because it determines two really important things. One, what life directions do you pursue in the first place? And two, can you compete in the top 1% of the world in those spaces? You can stack up as much motivation and discipline as you want, but when you were born, you came into this world with a unique set of tendencies, affinities, inclinations that really make you suited for a unique set of activities. And since you've been born, you've cultivated a particular set of skills that give you a competitive edge over someone who has not developed these skills. And if your purpose is not aligned with the tendencies you are born with and the skills you have developed already, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage to someone whose purpose is aligned with some of these things. Imagine trying to run your car on corn oil or trying to fuel your body with gasoline. While both of these are technically fuel, because they're the wrong fuel for the wrong vehicles, they can be extremely ineffective and in some cases deadly. There are a lot of people in the world who are going to go off themselves, to be honest, because they're trying to pursue an area they really shouldn't be pursuing in the first place. Or they're pursuing it around people that do not yet value what they're offering. Sometimes they'll never value those things. Knowing your purpose and pursuing it is like having the best fuel for the right vehicle. Imagine if Albert Einstein tried to become a powerlifter, or if Kobe Bryant pursued a PhD in quantum physics. While these are naturally driven people who could certainly figure things out above and beyond the average person, they would certainly not be fit to purpose. So I'd like to talk about how to start analyzing purpose and your purpose in a more pragmatic way. But before I do, let me recap some things you should know about purpose. First off, that purpose is not just one answer. In many cases, it is a set of answers. Purpose depends a lot on who you are asking and the environment you put yourself in. Purpose can shift around depending on the skills you developed and the demand that is being presented for those skills. And purpose is multifaceted and does not need to be articulated for you to create strong purpose. This last point gets people stuck because they think they don't have a strong purpose simply because they don't know how to properly articulate it. But when it comes to careers and positions that require a flexible set of skills, or in an industry where the problem domain is so wide and shifting like consulting, it can become very, very difficult to communicate what it is exactly that is your purpose. And frankly, in many cases, you don't need to explain your purpose in order to be on purpose and operating to make it stronger. This last point gets people stuck because they think they don't have a strong purpose because they don't know how to properly articulate it. When it comes to careers and positions that require a flexible set of skills, or in an industry where the problem domain is so wide, it needs to be so flexible and it's always changing, kind of like consulting, it can be very difficult to communicate what it is exactly that is your purpose. And frankly, in many cases, you don't need to communicate what your purpose is in order to keep on making it stronger. And I'll show you how in just a second. So before we get into thinking about how to make your purpose stronger, let me recommend how to think about purpose. There's a saying that's taken from the Hermetic philosophy, as above, so below. And as below, so above. I can recall back to my organic chemistry classes in college how organic and biological molecules behave and combine in ways that Sometimes humans behave and organize themselves to go create communities. One common pattern is how an enzyme or a catalyst is sometimes needed for two molecules to combine by temporarily raising their energetic state. I can see the purpose of these things at a microscopic level of analysis, as well as a wider macroscopic level of analysis. As above, so below means that there are patterns of energy and matter that carry at lower levels of analysis like chemicals, as well as higher levels of analysis like groups of people. In many cases, it's quite hard to reflect on who you are and where your blind spots are. That's why we get coaches when self-development by ourselves begins to fail us. But if I could see that there are similar patterns at macroscopic higher levels as well as microscopic lower levels, is it so wild for me to assume that one of my purposes mirrors both of these purposes exactly? Let me be more precise when it comes to purpose. There is a set of things I like doing and that I desire to do more of. That is my neurochemistry and physiology telling me, do more of that. It is hard to know why you like doing some of these things, and maybe the why behind that is for a completely different video or a completely different explanation. But when it comes to purpose, if you are doing things that you like, you are respecting what the inherent aspects of your particular DNA are necessary for maximizing survival and for passing your genetics on to your children. Clues to your purpose are hidden in the things you like doing because your natural biology is, for one reason or another, hooked up to taking on certain activities. It may not be apparent as to how your DNA is helping you survive or replicate with these activities, but it's giving you good instructions. You might look at this as being good with numbers or good with reading. You find it easy to talk to people, convince people. Perhaps you like building things. Perhaps you like to analyze and make abstractions. Perhaps you like helping people. Maybe you have a high risk tolerance and it excites you to go and take on big risks. Maybe you're the opposite of any and all of the above. You pay attention to the things that you like because they provide clues as to domains where your purpose might go and exist. This is what the psychologist Joseph Campbell meant by follow your bliss, and you will put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while, waiting for you, and the life that you ought to be living is the one you in fact are living. Wherever you are, if you are following your bliss, you are enjoying that refreshment, that life within you all the time. Keep in mind though, Joseph Campbell got a lot of heat for telling people to go follow their bliss, because it misses out on the discipline part required to go and build a skill set. People who follow their bliss end up bouncing from topic to topic, goal to goal, constantly starting and finishing, and ultimately forgetting to pay the bills. This is because there happens to be a whole lot of areas that you could find your purpose in, and there's a whole lot of pain and discipline that's required for cultivating a skill set in each of these areas. Furthermore, you have a lot of major companies setting up pleasure traps in the form of entertainment, super stimulation, sugar, caffeine, nicotine, anything to hijack your dopaminergic systems to distract you from where your true bliss might be, which is also why I advocate fasting so much, because when it comes to finding your purpose and landing on it correctly, it's actually pretty useful. But what this points out is that there is another side of this equation that has to be attended to. In addition to pursuing the things that you like, you have to pursue the things that you are valued for. Sometimes this comes in the form of the statement, pursue the things that you are good at. But the only way to know if you're good at something is that someone else has set up a system to determine how valuable you are at producing that value. So when you answer the question, what things am I good at? What you're really saying is, what things are you valued for? Somewhere between pursuing the areas that you inherently enjoy and the areas that you are valued for, you find a domain of where your purpose exists. There could be many particular areas inside of this purpose. If you're good with numbers and people like that you're good with numbers, you can find your purpose in things like accounting, investing, financial analysis, computational skills. If you also happen to be good with people, you might serve and continue that skill set to being a manager, a director, or a chief financial officer. If you're not good with people, you might be better served sitting behind a desk as the quantitative whiz who produces these magical models that solves all the problems in secret. If you also have, say, a knack for movies and the cinema, you might do all of this in the movie industry. If instead you don't like dealing with technical models, but you still like dealing with numbers, you might be doing this position where back of the envelope calculations are made more often, likely as a business owner or as a real estate investor. Pursuing areas you enjoy is basically like saying you are pursuing areas that involve harmonious participation of your brain, body, and nervous system. Pursuing areas that others value you for is basically saying you're pursuing areas that involve the harmonious participation of multiple people on a team who can coordinate their efforts to achieve max efficiency in output production, which comes in the form of business profit, added revenue, games won, missions accomplished, you name it. There's very little today that cannot be accomplished by the coordinated efforts of multiple human bodies in a team. Pursuing both what you like and what you are valued for puts you in a direction that is reflective of purpose. This question can be answered very simply even by just looking at your hands, okay? Doesn't need to be more complicated than that. There's something natural and good, for example, about just squeezing your fists. Sometimes in general, but especially if you're very frustrated or angry at something. Other people happen to value your ability to use that hand to go type something up or apply manual labor or even shake hands. The question of purpose of your hands is multifaceted, but it doesn't need to be more complicated than the variety of uses of your hands and your 10 fingers that you can go offer. Not only for what you enjoy in terms of the usage of your hands, but also how other people value you in terms of how you're able to use your hands to produce great labor. The question of purpose of your hands is multifaceted, but it doesn't need to be more complicated than the variety of uses your hands and 10 fingers offer, not only from the perspective of what you enjoy, but also from the perspective of the value that you provide to others. When you think about your own life purpose, it is less a single answer and more accurately the space by which you enjoy doing something, which also happens to offer other people value. You don't have to love it every minute. In fact, to be the very best, sometimes you have to push yourself so hard until you hate the very thing you once found much purpose in. But the good news is that if it is your purpose, after all, you'll find passion in it once again. So for the last part of this video, I'd like to talk about finding this purpose and making it very strong. As the first exercise, in the next 60 seconds, I'm going to ask you to actually take a guess and write down what your purpose is. I cannot tell you how many times in my life my first instinct was scarily accurate when it came down to giving a correct answer to something, but only when there was no pressure with doing so. So specifically in the next 60 seconds, put no pressure on yourself whatsoever and just write down what you think your purpose is supposed to be. If you don't know what it is, then just take a guess. If you're not comfortable with guessing, simply start writing my purpose might be, and just allow yourself to keep writing, and then just start writing it. Allow your hand to do the work for you. I know 60 seconds is a long time in YouTube world, but there is a ton of information here that you just can't get again after I start giving you some additional exercises to go through. So really pause the video here and now, take the next 60 seconds and write down what you think your purpose is. Okay, save that in a place where you can reference it for later on. I cannot tell you how valuable the information you just wrote down is. Your purpose may not be exactly what you wrote down, but you'll be able to analyze some of the elements for clues to follow up with later on. Next, I'm going to ask you over time to take as many strengths questionnaires as you possibly can. Everything. In fact, if you've taken them before, go pull them up and be ready to use them again. You don't have to do it now, but just over time, just start collecting a lot of these because there's a lot of information collected from a lot of different perspectives. I like the Myers-Briggs test. I especially like the Gallup 34 Clifton Strengths tests. I took both of these some time back and discovered they have remained pretty stable, some of them even a decade later. If there are some other personality, competency, and strengths questionnaires you're a big fan of, leave them in the comments below for the other viewers, and I'll do my best to go pin them later on. Now, as you collect data within each of these, what you should see are recurring themes. There might be some variation, but you should start seeing some themes coming up over and over and over again. For me, I always see an affinity for learning, good with numbers, excellent abstract thinking, very focused on individualization, restoration, high integrative complexity, meaning I know how to pull concepts and ideas together from many different fields. Also, go to what sort of activities you were naturally drawn to as a child. I was playing a lot of video games when I was growing up, but I was also asking why people did certain things. I was very focused on fixing relationships, and I was finding new ways of trading, selling, and going to go make money. I really enjoyed doing unorthodox, unconventional, and contrarian things that made me more competitive and valuable amongst my peers. Some even have suggested so much that the thing you were obsessed with between ages 10 and 18 is the thing you could potentially be best in the world at. Really consider what you were focused on at the time and the skills you developed during that time. If you weren't obsessed with anything at all, then consider the habits and patterns you were taking on back then that are helpful to you now today. Also, write down some things that others have specifically said that you are really, really good at. Be careful to choose people you actually respect and want to be around in the future when considering their opinions. Also ask yourself, if money was no issue at all, what would you do with yourself? If you start thinking about things like vacation and travel, that's not what you would do with yourself. That's just a travel brochure. I think Jordan Peterson said that first. I want to give him credit. But after you got all of your R&R out and all of your resting, relaxation, vacation, and after the existential dread of existence comes in, realizing that the bees are busy making honey and the beavers are busy building dams, what would you do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days per year for free? And could you go find someone to eventually pay you to do it? Whatever that is, go write that down as well. Also consider skills you want to be good at, as well as the skills you've developed already. Because you're not starting from scratch, you're not starting from a blank slate. You've already been developing some of these skills. You've already been working on yourself. Just start writing down some hard and soft skills you already have in order of your experience levels with them, including your experience with the industries you've already worked with previously. Now you can keep looking around for other questionnaires, videos, books, articles, and so on for determining personality, for determining what your strengths are, for how to find your purpose. But what I want to teach you today is how to take all the information from all of these and start finding strengths that show up high and consistent every single time you take a different one of these questionnaires or forms. You want to write some of these strengths down. Really look across all of them and see which ones are usually showing up with flying colors. Start off with just 10. For me, that might be, items that come up are analysis, learning, communication, helping others, abstract thinking, individualization, which really is just like looking at the person, looking at specific things and really considering the person in front, not just putting them in the box, high risk tolerance, and so on and so forth. Now that you have a list of strengths, you're going to order them in two different ways. So it's the same items, but they're two different lists. The first list is going to be ordering them from 1 to 10, from the ones you most like doing, with 1 being the thing that you like doing most, and 10 being the thing that you least like doing amongst those top strengths. I mean, they're all strengths that you see showing up over and over again, but you want to order them in preference of like, hey, which one do I like doing the most, and then which one do I like doing the least most. The second list is going to be ordering them again, but with number 1 being the strengths you are most valued for or most competent at, and 10 being the strengths you are least valued for or least competent at. Don't be worried if any of these are a close tie. Just be relatively close and make sure that they're ordered between 1 and 10. Then I'll multiply the numbers each strength got in each list. So for example, in the first list, if I had analysis on there and that was down at number 2, but in the second list, analysis was down at number 5, I'd multiply them together and get 10. And if communication was number 1 on the first list and number 1 on the second list, I'd multiply it together and I would get 1. And I'll do that for each of the 10 strengths. Just find the number that were on each of the lists and just multiply them together, and then take that final number and then reorder them as well, also from lowest to highest. If you did your math right, each strength will have some number between 1 and 100. Now, if you look at the list from top to bottom, after arranging them from lowest score at the top to highest score at the bottom, see if you can tell a story with these strengths in the order that they show up. That way you mention the top strengths first and the maybe not so top strengths last. So for example, if I got learning, individualization, intellection, restorative, and communication as my top 5 in that order, I might say that my purpose is to learn as much as I can about individuals, to think deeply about restoring their communication skills. And there are many different ways of telling this story, but that's just one example. And if you're having trouble here, you can put your strengths in the comment box below, and I'll see if we can put a story together over in that section together. Now that you got some strengths, you just have to make a decision as to what area, what industry, what field you can go and apply the story that you came up with for. Me personally, I want to start in the industries and areas I can make the most money doing these things. And it's really that simple. Then if I can't make money doing that, I'll go down to the list where I can make the second most money doing the story that I came up with. Because really money is a very strong indicator as to what the market really values. And the market is made up of people. So you're really finding out what the world really values. This is not to discount low-paying businesses or low-paying careers, but you can certainly find the highest paying thing that you like and that others value you for in the form of your own unique added competency that you came up from this sort of strengths questionnaire. Now that you have some direction, you can make the firm decision to go firmly in one direction using your have-to mindset to develop consistency and habit, and know with full confidence that you're on your path to setting yourself up as one of the best in the world. Of course, this is the 10,000 foot view, and you definitely want to have a coach to help you fine-tune this process with some expert eyes. But if you're like me, you've been spending a lot of time thinking about yourself already, and you'd like to try it on your own. So go ahead and give it a stab. Put in the comment box some other strength finder questionnaires you found to be useful and some of your top strengths to make into a story for your own purpose statement. This is an active process that fluctuates less and less the more you do this. Like anything, this is a tool, so use what is useful and forget the rest. In the next video, we're going to answer a question that came from the comment box in a recent video. In the next video, we're going to answer a question that came from the comment box in a recent video. Some of my previous clients want to know how I'm able to articulate my thoughts, ideas, and solutions really well. And I do have a couple of strategies you can use right away, as well as some things to do to build up the skill set of effective articulation. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to spread this message to others, and I'll see you on the next video.